See, EVP is it's a deal maker or breaker. Even if the functional owners are responsible for their teams in India, they are 10,000 miles away. And distance makes a difference. And as a leader, you are the one, I am the one locally managing things. EVP does become local leaders' responsibility without a doubt. Mumbai, last Marsh McLennan, under one roof, there is Marsh, there is Guy Carpenter, there is technology. Every bit of business and function is there under
A
one.
mini version of the global organization is what is there in Bombay.
Exactly. And so connecting all of that together, making sense out of it, becomes the leader's responsibility. I have a responsibility to bring it together, bind it together, act as a glue. Is because many a times people between different businesses, functions, do not necessarily communicate with each other or talk with each other unless there is a reason. I can become the reason to bind it all together. And there are no roles like me across the organization, or very few roles like me across the organization, who act as a GCC leader and bind it all.
Almost a favorite subject of mine. Want to go slightly deeper
Yeah.
because I feel that there is it is hugely important to designing, running, and scaling a GCC, which is organization design. There are various approaches of how one could go about designing the organization that would be successful to run a GCC. And there are various things that could actually lead to its downfall as well.
Yeah.
I'd just like you to reflect on your journey.
Sure.
You would have experimented with various different
Yeah.
approaches. Just talk to us about which ones have worked, which ones one should avoid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a very, very important topic. And it has evolved in
Yeah.
this industry over last 25 years, certainly. One thing to keep in mind while designing org design for GCC in India, that Indians are hungry for promotion. It could be universal, okay, so I should re-say it. Humans are hungry for promotion.
Right.
Indians and
More so
everywhere.
here.
And this is Gen Y, Gen Z, whatever. Every 18 months, unless my title changes, I don't feel like I have achieved anything in my life. Now, this was truer 10-15 years back. With the Gen Z, maybe it is changing, but it was very prevalent and it is still prevalent. So, the GCC organization design, typically you like a flat structure.
Yeah.
But initially it was flat, but with this need to give people promotion, recognition every 18 months, 2 years, somewhere the leaders have fallen into that trap. Maybe it is necessity, right? I mean, I'm the one who has done it, so I will not argue it is wrong. But what has happened, it has become tall, and there is a B1, B2, A1, A2 type of a thing that within a grade, that initially happened. And what happened in GCC India was the org design was done relevant to the needs of India. And as organization was growing, we were adding a layer as we were growing or scaling. Because like in BNY Mellon, when we were 1,000, the structure was obviously not going to work when you go to 7,000. Is because then you need a different structure. The problem came, it worked well. The problem came when the true integration with the global HR system happened, and in India we had to adjust to global grading system. It was a hell of an exercise. It's
Right.
because now we had a structure
Right.
that was going on for few years, and we had to map it to a pre-existing global grading and convert the designations and all that. uh, it was it was not effective. And the other thing is, which may be not happening now, but it happened definitely in the first 20 years or so, is when a job comes to India, it doesn't come full. What typically when migration happens is you cut the job into decouplable parts, and then a part of work that is easy to be done from India comes here. So if a full job is graded at A, then the job in India is A minus 1, is because it is not the full job.
Yeah.
Now when global grading happened, now we had to map that A minus 1. We couldn't map it to the A, so that whole misalignment happened.
Interesting.
That was challenge 1.
And can I just
Yeah,
interject?
yeah, yeah.
In any case, in some cases, the reverse may also be true that you're sending a job to India.
Yeah.
You've added a couple of things. Basically, what you're saying is the job evaluation and the grading that you have at the global level
Yeah.
versus what you have shipped over to India. There's some pluses and minuses. Minuses
Minus is more
more
often, huh?
often than a rare plus, and
Because
then you
in
end up with a the dissonance in the
misaligned structure
yeah
is
yeah yeah
because
yeah
the
yeah yeah yeah
India jobs were never there in the global grading,
yeah.
and they were perceived as one level lesser than what the sending location job is. That was problem 1. The second, we have created layers. I couldn't find for each layer a corresponding functional reporting manager in the global system.
What do you mean?
So, supposing in the global structure there are global process owner and 3 levels below. In India, I may have 4 because I have now already created 4.
Yeah, the hierarchy for the all the reasons of
So
promotions,
when you
etc.
want to now align functional reporting line for India to the global, earlier in the early days when we had already created India org design, it was done to our need. It was a bigger exercise to map to the right functional owners for them, and that meant that in later years there was no scope to add a layer in India at all. So once we were able to map the two, it became completely aligned, and it always has to remain that way. So the org design that we do in a GCC India, that's not a problem that third party service providers have. But in GCC, your org design has to stay aligned to the global.
Yeah, and let me go to another part of the org design. In this case, let's say the issues of um, the hierarchy of work levels,
Yeah.
remuneration levels, etc., that you so beautifully articulated. Another part of the same subject is how do I structure it uh, from a top-down
Yeah.
approach, right? That I could initially think about the business layer. Let's say in this case, we take a digital engineering company for lack of any other example. Let's take a digital engineering firm which is shifting some of its engineering work, which has to be done digitally, over to India. You have the engineering team, and then you have the corporate functions,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Verticals and the
Right.
horizontals.
Right.
There are these different approaches that many folks are comfortable that the engineering team,
Right.
or let's say it could be a product development
Right.
team, it could
Right.
be a R&D team within a pharma setup, or
Right.
whatever is specific to that industry,
Right.
will functionally report
Correct.
into the global counterparts, because there is thing around autonomy, thing
Correct.
around IP,
Correct.
etc., and you get an administrative leader.
Correct.
The other is you actually get somebody like a true managing director
Yeah.
of the India business.
Yeah.
Experiences on that, pros and cons, and how should one think about evaluating it?
So you know, the industry, as it has matured, the operating model has completely changed. So till 2015, 2016, 2017, the model that was prevalent in GCCs mostly was there was a India managing director or head of GCC or the CEO, call it whatever, and that individual had complete responsibility for running of that GCC center from execution, strategy, budget, recruiting, everything.
Hmm.
Like you would run a third party,
Hmm.
right? Similar.
Hmm.
That worked till the time the GCCs were smaller in size, were and kind of under the radar.
Hmm.
As the GCCs have grown, like when you reach a 10,000 head count, obviously the scale is so big that many people then are interested, involved in the running of GCC.
Hmm.
And naturally the inclination to take direct control of what's happening in India for my team, let me have a say in that,
Right.
emerges. It's a fair thing, right?
Right.
Earlier we always used to say it's a balanced shared leadership approach. I'm locally managing it, but when it comes to important decisions we are taking it together.
Right.
That worked for that scale of the organization. The operating model that has changed in the last 10 years is that the India leader has become an administrative reporting line, and the team now functionally on PeopleSoft or whichever system reports to the global process owner. That is a big shift. And then, the role of the India leadership team versus the global leadership team, that is a balance.
Hmm.
That is a little that has to happen with good communication between the two leaders.
Hmm.
Sometimes can be a challenge,
Hmm.
sometimes works beautifully.
Hmm.
But that's a very very typical, very peculiar nature of the GCC industry.
Hmm.
That's what I would say.
Another adjacent topic, to again steelman the case of why GCCs are important, and the topic is EVP, the
Yes.
employee value proposition. That I've seen for so many of the
Yeah.
GCCs become a super important part of whether a GCC would succeed
Yeah.
or not. Just
Yeah.
your views on that. Go deeper.
So if I can relate employee value proposition also to employee engagement,
Yeah, yeah,
little bit,
yeah. They are connected.
I can talk for a minute about my own theory, which I am hoping of patenting one day.
Oh wow!
You know,
Yeah, yeah. Please go on. Yeah.
it's a Maslow's theory,
Huh.
right?
The
The
needs of
human
hierarchy.
needs of hierarchy, right?
Yeah, the
Which
hierarchy of needs. Yeah,
hierarchy of needs.
yeah,
So it is based on that. I'm
yeah,
not,
yeah.
it is similar. The only thing is that yes, so what does an employee look for? The physiological needs are at the base.
Yeah,
That is the compensation,
yeah,
right? That goes to the base. Unless the employee value proposition, why do I feel engaged, is I have to feel I am paid well. The money is never enough. That's a fact. And you give a raise today and tomorrow it is forgotten. It is also true. And so I personally don't think we should be anywhere above P60 in the
yeah,
compensation,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I never recommend you should be P70, P80. That's not why people stay.
Hmm.
But you can't pay less,
Hmm.
right? So the compensation is
So
very
just a little
important,
over the median.
little over the median.
Hmm.
That comes the basic hierarchy.
Hmm.
Then comes emotional engagement. Do I feel valued? Do I feel recognized? And do I belong in this organization? Am I getting a pat on the back when I do a good job? Is there someone who is listening to my views? Can I speak my mind? This is sort of emotions. And if the first thing you get right, and if the employees feel they are emotionally connected to the organization, they will stay. So your EVPs have to be around that. But the third one, which is mine, comes, which is intellectual engagement. If I'm paid well, I feel emotionally attached. But if my brain is not feeling that I'm learning something, my job is pushing me to the limits, will also not work.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the organization should think about how do they approach EVP or employee engagement is from these three angles. And many think about the compensation, of course, and that includes your well-being and your insurance, everything that is around the compensation. The emotional bit as well, lot many organizations think of in terms of how do we make the employee feel connected to the organization. The third bit is very important as well. Are you creating environment within your organization that is allowing them to grow intellectually as well? And you can't really change their job every day, and you can't have them innovate. That's where actually the innovation, AI, digital, pushing them to change the way things work, expanding the scope of the job, international assignments, client interactions, do various projects, get involved in different things, keeps their brain engaged. We all need it. And after few years, any job becomes routine, at least 60 to 70%.
It's a good, it's a great sort of tagline to have the whole intellectual engagement, and I can almost see that it's parallel to what we often get as a feedback when you run a good diagnostic around workplace engagement, that what's my quality of work,
Yeah,
what is the learning that I
yeah,
have
yeah,
inside the
correct.
organization. This Google used to have previously, which is quite popular, the 20% time that one would get every week, which is to do projects that add great value but is also of their own personal
Yeah,
interest in
yeah,
terms
yeah,
of growth.
yeah,
So all of those
yeah,
things would fit into this intellectual
yeah,
engagement that you're talking about.
yeah,
And no, that's great. And I wish you get a patent.
yeah. Whoever is watching it,
Yeah,
knows that this is my patent.
yeah. They should refer to this conversation now that you have disclosed. In your roles as you had put this together, did EVP become important, or how should the chief exec, or how should a India MD of a upcoming GCC think about EVP?
No, EVP is it's a deal maker or breaker. And in the two operating models that I explained, right? Even if the functional owners are responsible for their teams in India, they are 10,000 miles away, and distance makes a difference. And as a leader, you are the one, I am the one locally managing things. EVP does become local leaders' responsibility without a doubt. And I call it, a lot of times I describe the GCC as a microcosm of the
Yeah,
organization, global
yeah.
organization. I like to think as the global CEO, because Mumbai, last Marsh McLennan, under one roof, there is Marsh, there is Guy Carpenter, there is technology, every bit of business and function is there under
A mini
one.
version of the global organization is what is there in Bombay.
Exactly. And so connecting all of that together, making sense out of it, becomes the leader's responsibility. And even though I directly do not own, right, that each any of the business, I have a responsibility to bring it together, bind it together, act as a glue. Is because many a times people between different businesses functions do not necessarily communicate with each other or talk with each other unless there is a reason.
Hmm.
I can become the reason to bind it all together. And there are no roles like me across the organization, or very few roles like me across the organization, who act as a GCC leader and bind it all. I can get two business teams together in a room and have a innovation discussion with both of them, and who knows, an idea from one business can be accepted or duplicated by the business from other. Somebody has to just bring them together, and this likely will happen in the India GCC more
Going forward.
than a business location. I have found, for whatever reason, the tendency is to keep within their own business when it is
Yeah.
in London or New
Yeah,
York.
yeah, yeah.
The
You're
tendency to collaborate more is here, and that is the leader's responsibility.
It's
That's
a
the role.
brilliant point. Absolutely brilliant point that you make, Dinesh. And, for, again, purposes of our audience, I recently came across this report by BCG on what drives success and how do they measure success of successful
Yeah.
capability centers. And within the they beautifully defined that in two parts: the strategic priorities and the operational excellence. And within the ops excellence side, there is this section on people
Yeah.
or talent, whichever way we define it. And the three things that they talk about as well is how many, if I'm right, how many global roles
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
deeply
Yeah.
embedded
Yeah.
inside the
Yeah.
GCCs, and
Yeah.
you're driving that. The second is actually how well defined is the EVP,
Yeah.
articulation of the EVP, and the activation of the EVP
Yeah.
actually. And the third is, I think it talks about driving performance which is measurable and outcome based. So I think they become really,
Yeah.
it does make sense that the fundamental to building a solid
Yeah.
capability
Yeah.
center in India. A couple of other things before we go to the other side of the argument. Um, how do you drive scale of a GCC? Many get stuck in that, they start with, let's say, 50 people organization, go
Yeah.
up to maybe 200, 300. But
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying every GCC has to be like thousands and thousands
Yeah.
of people. I think the average is about 1,200 in India per GCC,
Mm-hmm.
2,000 GCCs, 2 million. So it's about 1,000 people per GCC. But when it comes to scaling up, you have seen
Yeah. Yeah.
two
Yeah.
very specific ones at BNY and then at MMGS. What drives scale?
So in the offshore world, I'm sure it is the true for third-party vendors as well. There is a concept of push and pull.
Hmm.
In a GCC life cycle, there are two phases that clearly will come after the GCC setup. The first few years is push. The work is being pushed to India. There is a mandate. Now we have done investment in India, explore what can be done there. So there are, drives that happen, opportunities are identified. Most of them work, some don't work. There are experiences, right? That's why the rubber meets the road two levels below the senior leadership in that organization, because they are the ones who are experiencing India every day. It's not the senior leadership. And if their experience is not favorable, it will not progress. So that has to work. It does. Mostly it does. But a time will come, the scale, and by that time you will get sufficient scale. And that scale, it's difficult to quantify because that will depend on the global headcount of the parent organization. It's all driven by that, basically. But a day will come when the push will stop. And then the India GCC has to start pulling work. And that will happen only when they have proven their capabilities. They have proven that quality of the work done here is better. They have proven that the knowledge levels are excellent. they can take more, but that conviction comes is when the pull starts. That is voluntary. That happens when the global stakeholders say, you can do more, do this, do this, that it keeps adding. So the push gives you foundation, the pull is a continuous process, it never stops. In between, the India team has to find efficiencies, reduce headcount, all that keeps happening. But the scale, and typically, once the global headcount, if you cross 5% of the global headcount, you are on the higher side, right? I mean, that from 5 to 10% is a journey that can only happen with pull.
Right.
But I've seen up to 10% of the global headcount, that scale is achieved and can be achieved in India.
And how important is the role of the leader who leads that in the.
Again, in the new model as well, where the GCC leader is not functionally responsible, the pull can only happen when the center does well, when the capabilities are proven. And to encourage that, to find, really stay focused on that, whether it is happening or not, motivating, plugging the India leaders to the right point where, see, one thing in the GCC world is important is the India leaders need to have a seat at the table. Unless the leaders in India are at the right table, their voice will not be heard, their opinion will not matter, their ideas will go in the air, thin air. But how do you ensure that the right people are sitting at the right table is mostly should be done by the India GCC leader. Once that happens, then the responsibility is of the India leader sitting on that table to make most of it.
Right, right.
That's when pull happens. But
Right.
they do need support. It's just that's the role, right? That is the role of the India leader, of developing that environment, culture of all that happening.
Couple of other topics to just steelman this case finally is the initial part, again going back to the whole evolution up until maybe 2015, maybe a couple of years afterwards as well. It was about the whole scaling up, accelerating growth, digital transformation, but they were limited to, let's say, to that extent, the adoption of digital technologies or digital transformation. But the last few years has been more around broader transformation and innovation that these capability centers can drive.
Yeah.
Is there again a deliberate paths that one can, at certain level of maturity, that you start thinking not just about digital transformation but extending it to a broader company level transformation, bringing it under a broader innovation definition?
No, it's a good question, and because you mentioned 2015, it suddenly clicked me. That was the time, that was the year the RPA, robotics process automation.
Yeah, you have done quite some work in that.
I have done a lot of work on that, but that I think was a defining time for the GCC industry in India for one big reason, is because till that time, the India leadership, even I have been told many times by my US stakeholders, that you have a big empire, Dinesh.
Oh.
You have 5,000 people in your organization. Right. You keep adding headcount. Right. And that in fact was the case, and for no fault of the India leader, but the growth was happening and the headcount was rising.
Yeah.
And the tendency of leaders in India was to describe their success was by how large is my team.
Yeah, that's how the word empire.
That was the word, right? How big we
Right,
are.
right.
This was the first time in 2015, and it was that's why I said reinvented myself, right? I and my team, when I say I, by the way, this is my BNY Mellon team at the time as well. We sat together and we said, we must take leadership in this RPA program. We must be the one trying it out first here, rather than people doing it and then we being asked to do it. Now, if we were successful in RPA, I'm saying if we were, because we were not as much as we had thought about, but the mindset was there. We were very ready for it. That if it results into our 10% headcount going down in India, technically it would mean my empire is shrinking. But yes, we want to do it. That was the first time that thinking came, that we have to take lead in innovation. We have to think about, are we optimally organized? What is the scope of automating and eliminating jobs in India? That had not happened. Now, RPA was a great idea. It had many limitations, but any AI journey, it happens, right? Even today's AI is just a promise. It hasn't really delivered what it is supposed to. RPA was very important at the time. It did give us, we were thinking hundreds of roles automation. It didn't happen for many reasons, but it changed the mindset of leaders here, that we have to look at innovation, digital, RPA to achieve efficiency. And then, RPA led to different things, and now today's, of course, AI. Now the mindset is already there. I mean, no leader today. There are very few who define their success in terms of there absolutely are. Yeah. But they already know that that's not how
the metric. Yeah.
Unless I'm able to show that I add value, I'm a true GCC, or I am also looking at automation, AI, that it will not bring success.
Got it. Last question to sum up all that we have discussed around building a great capability center for a global organization. How do you measure its value at the enterprise level? What would come to your mind?
So, it's again, cost arbitrage was the sole success factor. Life was very easy back then. A job, I mean, it is very real. You move a job from US, New York to a Mumbai, it straight gives a very chunk of savings.
1/3, $60,000 to $20,000.
Straight.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, once that is banked, the next year your cost line has now become 20,000.
Right.
And the market has forgotten for the company.
Right. Public memory is short on those things.
It's very short. So your baseline now becomes 20,000.
Correct.
Right. So the question is about GC's
enterprise value that one should go after.
So that value is achieved, done, banked. And now year on year, the India GCC has to achieve a 5% efficiency, and that is the sort of value, but 5% is not much.
Right.
The argument now is to add value in terms of, are you able to do any revenue enhancing activities? Are you just becoming a cost saver, or are you able to help the business? See, there is a front office, middle office, and back office, right?
Yeah.
In every global business.
Yeah.
Typically, India GCC is associated with the back office.
Yeah.
And a little bit of middle office.
Yeah.
But the front office is not as much involved with India.
Yeah.
Now, front office is, of course, the one who drives revenue. And for the reasons I said earlier, the permanent establishment risk is always there. So you can't really have a person sitting and making sales call and booking sales, right? So that's a no-no. But RFPs, right? Is there a team that can do from India, or, be own RFP process, or, service like certain section of clients from here? That now goes, so the India GCC expand its wings from back to middle to front. That's also a way of looking, are you servicing the whole organization? Once you take that view, then the amount of work that you can do for the larger organization has no limits.
That's a great way of thinking about it.
The
Yeah.
argument is changing from cost to value.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the GCC India has to, it needs global support. It
Yeah.
cannot be done by a leader in India
Yeah.
dreaming about this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
But it has to go into that direction, and then the true value of India
Yeah.
GCC will come.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also almost then mapping that some of these processes or work that gets executed between the front, middle, and back office, where do they fall? Am I incrementally making quarter on quarter progress, that
Yeah.
I'm moving up the chain?
Yeah.
Which also then means that the capability that or the competency that the center carries has to evolve continuously. You have to let go of some of the competencies that you've built over these
Yes.
years,
Yes.
actually deliberately cut it off.
Yes.
Maybe transition that over to outsource partners where scale and efficiency and discipline
Correct.
becomes the core. That's their moat of the business,
Yeah.
that the way they can keep the whole thing disciplined,
Yeah.
a GCC will find it very difficult because the EVP, the culture,
Yeah.
and the everything is built for a slightly different
Yeah.
purpose in a GCC rather than a third party. That sums up the first part beautifully. Thank you very much for that. Before we move on to the second one, which is now we should argue maybe fundamentally more important part of the two discussions.
Yeah.
Maybe that has more value today because everybody seems to have a reason or two or three or four or whatever. This, like they say, success has many fathers,
Yeah.
many owners as well, that everybody is talking about the success and what you can do, but not many are focusing maybe on
Yeah.
the underlying dangers that may be
Yeah.
lurking
Yeah.
around. So
Yeah.
this is a great segue into the next section.